All right, so we are headed into our fourth workshop, and what we will be covering today is we're going to do a game, and I was inspired by our STEM Push folks who also did this game with us at our last network meeting, and it's called This or That Fall Edition, and you'll please put your responses in the chat. So I'm going to give you two different things to choose from, and within the chat, you'll put it down, what your selection is, and I might ask you like why you made that selection. So let me switch. Okay, the first one is apple cider or hot chocolate? Do you prefer apple cider or hot chocolate? Hot chocolate. I put apple cider when I put it down, but I feel like as it's getting colder, I might go for hot chocolate. Let's see. We got some hot chocolates, apple ciders, apple ciders. Camille likes both. Apple cider, hot chocolate definitely. It's still fall. Yes, it is still fall. And it's still 90 degrees here in Tucson. Well, I think it's going down to 80 now, and it might rain. Hot chocolate all the way. That's a tough one. Let's see. Anyone want to share why they have a preference for either hot chocolate or apple cider? I think the marshmallows and hot chocolate do it for me. All right, next one is hot chocolate is my equivalent to coffee. So you drink it every day? That's awesome. All right. Pumpkin patch or a haunted house? Would you rather sit in a wagon, go around the pumpkin patch and choose a pumpkin, or do you want to go in a haunted house and have the thrill of possibly seeing something around the corner, getting spooked? What is your choice? Let's see, we have both. I don't know if both was to pumpkin patch and haunted house or apple cider, Raquel.
No, for the pumpkin patch or haunted house.
Oh, you wanted to do both? You
Yeah,
did do both,
so
didn't you?
so funny thing, I went with my buddies to the haunted house Friday night and we went to Terror in the Corn and
Mm.
they were too freaked out. So next day they let's go hang out, let's do something not scary. So we ended up going to a pumpkin patch the next day. So that's why I say both.
I do see a lot of haunted houses on here. Rudy, I don't know if Rudy still does it, but Rudy used to have like a haunted garage that people would go to.
Yeah, we haven't done it in a little while, but well, you know what? We still try to scare people as they come by my son's house now. And what was kind of cool was that like as people were coming by this year, they were like, "Do you remember this is that house where they?" And so that was kind of cool. So we need to step it up next year again. So gotta keep up the tradition.
Nice. I
Nice.
think I went to the pumpkin patch for the first time and it was pretty fun. All right. Crunchy leaves walk or a cozy blanket? Would you rather go in the crisp air and jump on some leaves or cuddle up with a cozy blanket and be nice and toasty warm? I think I chose crunchy leaves, but I also think it depends on what time. If it's the morning, I'd probably be like, I want to be in a blanket. I see walk around, cozy blanket, cozy blanket, sleep. How could you not sleep in a cozy blanket? Cozy blanket, a walk, cozy blanket, especially if it can be cool and crisp. Yep. The temperature differences definitely help. Are the leaves changing in other places for people? I don't know if there's leaves really changing here. Maybe palm tree leaves. Yep, for Aiden, no. For Whitney. All right, next one is, would you rather go to a bonfire or stay in and watch a movie? bonfire, or movie?
Mine's
Bonfire, movie. Sorry,
reminds
Raquel, what were you
me
saying?
reminds me of high school during what do they call that? Homecoming, where you go to the bonfire.
Yeah, I wonder, did they do a bonfire here for
Yeah,
U of
I
A?
don't. I'm not sure if they did, but I remember last year they did it in front of the old main on the other
Hmm.
side where the flagpole was at.
Yeah, in front of Old Main, like probably where the fountain is,
Yeah,
so they could
somewhere.
throw
Yeah.
fire, so throw water on it if they needed to.
I
Lots of
remember.
bonfires, movies.
I remember in high school, our principal, so he's not native, so we had a bonfire my senior year, and the principal were playing pinion, and he thought they lit the eagle on fire, and most of us, so I don't know, we're supposed to burn an eagle.
You're like, what are you doing?
I know.
Lots of bonfires and a couple movies. Let's see. Next one is Thanksgiving leftovers or Halloween candy.
Mm.
It's all right, Devereaux. At least we got you back.
Doing the leftovers
Oh,
anytime.
go back, go back. Don't answer that one yet. Okay. Just the Thanksgiving leftovers or Halloween candy.
I got the leftovers.
Leftovers. No one chose candy yet. Everyone likes the leftovers. Oh, both. We got a both. Candy, two candies. I think if there was a lot of Twix, if it depends on the candy, I think for me.
Mm.
Yeah. If it was a lot of, I don't know, candy corn, maybe not. Just kidding. Sorry if anyone really likes candy corn. I think that might be a question on here.
Mm.
All right. Fuzzy socks or house slippers? Does anyone have any fuzzy socks that they like to go around in at their house, or do you prefer the house slippers? I think because I'm old, I need foot support, so I need the house slippers.
Somebody said barefoot.
Barefoot? Neither. Yeah, house slippers, fuzzy socks, house slippers, barefoot, fuzzy socks. Is So Real Carefoot like a brand? Like Crocs?
Bro, I meant to say barefoot. I didn't mean to say.
Oh. Barefoot, two barefoots. Even in the cold?
It's,
I have
that's the best. That's the best you'll get.
that is you're a strong one. I feel like if my feet are cold, then my whole body will get cold. All right, next one. Let's see what we got. S'mores or candy corn? S'mores or candy corn? S'mores? Both. I didn't think there would be a candy corn lover. Oh, we got more candy corn lovers. Wow.
That's interesting.
I think I need to try it again. Candy corn is pretty good. I need to find some. I should have tried some when they had the sale. I like going to the grocery store after Halloween and seeing everything 50% off, and that's when I get my candy.
That that happened. I think I went to Target a couple days ago, and all the Halloween decorations were like half off.
Mhm.
And I was
Spirit
like,
too.
who's ready? I was like, who's ever ready for Halloween next year? So I'm having a blast.
Me. Just kidding. I don't know if the candy would last then. Lots of s'mores, couple candy corns. Rudy, I'm thinking yours was for candy corn, or were you just being an advocate?
No, I like candy corn. It's pretty
I
good.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Next, pumpkin pie or apple pie? I think what Grady put down was sweet potato pie, but I had never had sweet potato pie, so I switched it to apple pie. Pumpkin pie, apple pie, pumpkin pie, hot apple pie with melted ice cream. Yep, pumpkin pie.
You should try that
Both.
at Station.
Pumpkin pie, neither. Jessica, do you like any kind of pies? pecan pie, or pecan, as some people say. Cherry pie, like any pies. Okay, fair. Different dessert for you then. Maybe a cake or ice cream or something. Ruby, you don't like pie either? What do you all like instead? A cobbler. Brownies. Those are good. Cake or brownies? Awesome. Everyone has their preference and they all sound really good. And I hope you all have those sometime as we're coming up on the holiday season with family. That is the end of this or that. I asked at the end when we did this for our STEM push meeting if it was like a personality test and what the results were. They're like, no, it's for fun. So same thing. Hopefully you learned some likes of your peers. Yeah. So we'll move on to our agenda for today. Thank you all for playing that game. So this is what we're going to be working on. We already did our intro icebreaker, and we're going to be talking about looking at our interpretation for all our results for the geoscience research project, and also doing a conclusion and then doing a recap. So I think it'll go pretty quickly today, and we'll have some time afterwards if needed. If folks want to discuss any questions or go into a breakout room to discuss things, then there should be time for that as well. Again, these are our community norms to keep focused on a goal, to strive to understand multiple perspectives, be willing to be disturbed and change your mind, critique ideas and concepts, not people, share the space, stay engaged in the work and respect each other's time, recognize when each of us needs space, accept non-closure, apologize and work to repair damage if you violate a norm. So if we can just pick one of these to focus on as we go through today's meeting, it could be to stay focused or to try to understand folks, share the space. So the next thing we're going to do is try to think back, because the last workshop that we had was before Halloween, which seems like it was a pretty long time ago, right? That was 2 weeks ago. So can anyone help summarize what we talked about at our last meeting? Feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute. And these photos here are meant to sort of work as some clues or friendly reminders, if that helps to see what we might have talked about. Yes, Whitney put in the chat, we talked about qualitative and quantitative projects. Correct, we did. Some ideas and tools for what you can use depending on what type of project that you have, thinking about what your project is and your variables, and thinking, do I want to conduct this experiment as something where I'm going to be collecting numbers type data, or is it something that I want to focus on where I'm doing qualitative data, like interviewing people or focusing on things that are not necessarily quite specifically numbers related themes and things like that. So thank you. Anything else? Who else remembers what we covered? Ruby said that you need to be precise in your material list and methods. We also talked about the Rules Wizards, which is a website that helps us get the proper paperwork for our experiments. Correct, yes. We watched this video of from the Denver science fairs, and on that website they have a lot of different step-by-step videos that really help with thinking about how to create a hypothesis and thinking about methods and procedures. And so in the experimental methods and procedures video, there was the example of the student, I believe his name is Mohammed, who was wanting to do an experiment with a turtle and seeing how fast the turtle moved if given cantaloupe or crickets. So seeing which one they preferred and like how fast they moved over a week. And so for that experiment, thinking about like, okay, what materials are needed. So of course, the general things that would be clear were like, okay, you need the turtle, you need the pieces of food and things like that. But how do you go even further? There was things related to like safety, because turtles can give you salmonella. So washing your hands, using gloves and whatnot, making sure that your experiment is consistent. So maybe having a ruler to make sure that you can measure out the spacing for when you're taking your data, or even making sure that your what you're serving the turtle is consistent, like the melon pieces and things. So measuring the melon pieces. So going through all of those steps and thinking like, okay, this is my materials list. This is the process that I'm going to do. So yes, thank you. Anything else, anybody? I had to grab a water. And to go further with this rules wizard, we went through this step by step, and later within the presentation, we'll see what one of your peers did as they went through and see what they received in terms of what's needed for their experiment. Related to the rules wizard, if you went through the process and if the experiment included anything like human participants, if you're surveying people or asking them questions, different things like that, then you're more than likely having to do a process where your project gets reviewed by the internal review board. And that's what this SARSF photo up here is for. So you might go through the rules wizard and they may say you need your project reviewed. So SARSF has a process here, and they would need the copy of whatever it is that you're doing, your methods and your procedure, your informed consent form, and just a process of like what are any sort of risks that might come with this experiment, and how will you lower those risks to make sure that people are comfortable and not being not feeling uncomfortable or stressed and things in any way. So if I forgot anything, feel free to put it in the chat, but I'm pretty sure we covered most of that. So thank you all for helping me with that review. So diving into this week's content, after you conduct your experiment, we also talked about, sorry, let me clear my we talked about writing things down in the lab notebook that you have and documenting the different things from your trials, right? So after you have finished your experiment, sorry, I have to clear my throat again. Sorry about that. So what do you do after you've completed your process? So what you're going to do is gather your data and observations. This could be pictures that you've taken, results that you've written down. It could be numbers or your interviews that you've done with people. And you want to make sure that you're collecting this data, doing whatever you need to do. If it's averages, summarizing your themes from the interviews, or doing whatever comparisons, things like that. You want to put it into a format where you can communicate it nicely to others, including your peers and the judges if you're entering the science fair, right? Helpful data analysis tools can be things like Excel. Stata is something that I've used and other people have used to run statistical experiments, but you can also do a lot of these in Excel as well, as it's free, or R is another statistical package that folks can use, or even Qualtrics. Qualtrics is a site that you can use to survey individuals and collect data, and it'll also help you by creating different graphs and reports and things like that for you to after you collect it, which makes it pretty helpful. It might do some like averages, different quartiles, means, and things, and sometimes do different response graphs, like how many times people said no versus yes, pie charts and things like that. And so I do a lot of this with school. So if you need assistance doing this, please let us know. We're here to help. And so as you're creating these things like graphs, make sure that you're labeling these items, because what I'm told a lot with school is if someone didn't read your paper, if they didn't read your experiment, you want them to be able to look at a table or a graph and know what they're looking at if it's by itself. They want it to be standalone is the term that's used a lot. So making sure things that are appropriate labeled, that there's a title, and things like that. Sometimes choosing specific colors and whatnot help. What I've tried to do a lot is use colors that are different enough from one another. And there's also individuals who maybe like have different color blindness needs. And so I think I just looked up like a palette or something online to make sure that whatever I chose was appropriate. Also make sure to include units of measure as well. So if you did your measurements in inches, or if it's by weight, grams, ounces, or pounds, that's also really helpful for the judges and other people to know, like, okay, what exactly are we looking at with this graph or table or things like that. And you want to ask yourself these questions. So are my results complete? Did I forget anything? Did I forget to include something that would make this more clear? Do I need to collect more data? An instance where you might ask yourself if you want to collect more data is if there's like inconsistent results, maybe you can run another trial with something. If you have the materials, that's the big thing, because sometimes materials can be expensive to get. And if that's the case, then that can go in your conclusions, and you can say, for future, I would do this again. And if there's any mistakes that need to be noted, because that can go into your conclusions, you want to make a note of that. And as you're looking at the results, take note on if what you're seeing is supporting your hypothesis or not. Because again, this experiment and your results are the data that's there to see if your experiment has a supported hypothesis. And we talked about these different items that you can use to show your results. Sorry, I have to cough again. So here's some examples, and I know that some folks have completed the assignments using either like a Google platform or Microsoft platform, or even whatever the Apple equivalent is. So if for some reason you don't have access to Excel because of like the licensing, you can do the same sort of configurations with Google Sheets. It's pretty similar, but if you need help translating from like one to the other, we can help with that. I have less experience with numbers, the platform numbers. So if you need help with that, I can look at some YouTube videos and things like that to see if I can help. But yeah, these are the ones I would recommend if you're needing to do some sort of like data analysis and things like that. Does anyone use anything else besides these for like science fair projects or pulling up results for anything mathematic or with any of their other projects and stuff that they'd like to recommend? No. And if you're doing something that's like not quantitative but qualitative, you could still use Excel if you put the like responses and items into there to summarize, but you don't necessarily have to. You could count the number of times something came up in interviews and things like that to sort of signify like this is how many times this was discussed. So it was a fairly important theme. Yeah, just some ideas. So after looking through your results and making sure that they're complete, creating those graphs or tables, things that make your results clear to the audience, you're going to want to summarize your results and decide if they support your hypothesis. And thinking back to your either your literature review, if you're doing your project based off of what you covered for your pre-assignment, you can refer back to your literature review or pre-assignment to say that this makes sense based off of what I learned from X, Y, and Z. Here you would include any sort of references if you're seeing that there's connections being made. You would also briefly like summarize your methods, but not excuse me, but you don't need to focus on it too much. But you do want to make sure that you're making clear the relationship between your independent variable and your dependent variable. Sorry, I should have spelled these out since I don't think that I referred to them as IV and DV in previous presentations. And when thinking about your outcome, we're actually going to talk about that in the other slide. So when thinking about your outcome, you can also decide like what are changes that you would make for the future, or what are some follow-up experiments that you could do. So for instance, going back to the turtle experiment, if there were things within the turtle's habitat that maybe were like getting in the way when they were doing the commute from their starting point to the end where the food is, they might say like maybe the turtle would start going and then they would get distracted. So for future projects, I would suggest making sure that the path was clear for the turtle, or making it in a way that things wouldn't distract the turtle. For future trials, maybe they would add more trials for future. They might say like, cantaloupe and crickets aren't very comparable. One is like a plant-based thing and the other one is like protein. So maybe I would choose two things that are protein or plant-based, because I actually don't know anything about turtles. So they could say they actually really don't like this in their diet, you know what I mean? So think about things that you would tweak, or it also doesn't have to necessarily be off of your methodology about things that might have gone not completely smoothly. It could also be because, like, oh, I found that the turtle was really motivated by something within the experiment. And so to further look at turtle behavior, I would suggest that this happen, or to see if this is the same behavior that's seen with this other species of turtles, you know. Yeah, so it could be something that was discovered by whatever it is that you did. Any questions so far? No. And in the case where if you had an idea and your hypothesis wasn't necessarily supported with your results, that doesn't mean that you didn't learn something. That doesn't mean that the experiment wasn't worthwhile, because the whole point of this experience is to learn how to test things and to conduct science. And so it's all worthwhile because it's a learning experience, right? And so if anyone is in the situation where the results don't support the hypothesis, do not change it and say, like, change your hypothesis. What you'll find all the time in science is that's what happens. But the point is it's a whole process. We looked at all those different things at the beginning of our workshops, where it was like you start with your idea, you go through the whole process, and then you're back around to the top again, where you continue to build on those things. And that's how science is. I'm sure if you talk to any scientist, engineer and things, it's like, well, these are all the things that I had to do that didn't work out to finally get to the thing that did work out. And so never fear if that's what happens. It's all about showing what you did and what was learned from what you did. So I'm going to go back here. Does anyone have any other advice that they want to share, or any questions that they have? Let me look at the chat. Okay, if not, we'll move on. I think something I would share is just to be patient with yourselves, and to ask for help if needed as you're going through this process. And the conclusion is really about that reflection to show what was learned and the takeaways and sort of what you would want to do for the future. So these are the upcoming deadlines. We had one that wasn't really a deadline for November 10th. That was just to start your experiment if you've already gone through the process of going through the ISEF forms wizard, to say that you don't need like an IRB approval and things like that to start on your experiment. If you are someone who does need IRB approval, then you'll have to wait to start your experiment until you get that approval. So if you are someone that needs that, please let us know. We've been going through the different project submissions to see if people have notified us that they do need that with their workshop. And as a reminder, it takes about 2 weeks for ISEF to review everything. We're not into 2026 yet, when I feel like that's where they're very much busy looking at those things. So it's better to do it now to give them time to review everything. today is the 12th, and so that's when our workshop is happening. So I was asked by email when the next deadline is. We're hoping that by the 24th that you'll start wrapping up your experiment conduction, and afterwards we'll start creating your results, visuals, and graphs and things like that. Between then, we'll have our 5th workshop where we'll talk about how to create your abstract. And December 9th is going to be our last workshop of this year, so of 2025. We'll pick it up again in 2026, but for 2025, December 9th will be our last workshop. Then you'll start creating your conclusions, abstract, and submitting your first presentation draft. So at the last workshop, we'll talk about creating your presentation draft. And then January 5th is when we're hoping to have your second and final, your second draft of the presentation. And by January 26th is when we hope to get your final draft and start discussing how to do an oral presentation. And for some folks, I believe that their science fairs might be a little bit sooner. So depending on when your science fair deadline and registration is, we might have to speed this up a little bit. So it depends on which one you plan on entering. And to just show everyone an example of what I mean by the submissions that we're looking at, I'm referring to the NASEP Research Project Guide, which will prompt you to create either a shared Google slide, a Microsoft PowerPoint, or iCloud Keynote. And so this is the research guide from one of your peers. So we talked about the science fair selection. They selected the Denver Science Fair, so they have an entry deadline of January 11th. So their timeline is going to be a little bit quicker than what we have created. And their research topic is on geothermal energy. So they put here what their research question is. This is what their hypothesis is. It's related to heat retention and stating that rocks that are more porous will not retain as much heat in comparison to rocks that are more dense. And the purpose here is a statement of like what their research project purpose is. So it's to see how different earth materials retain and transfer energy. So far, they've completed what their materials list is. So they would require 3 different containers, 500 grams of 3 different materials. So the items that they chose were clay, dry sand, and crushed rock, a thermometer, which is likely to check the temperature of the different items, a scale likely to measure the materials, some sort of heat source. So it seems like they're wanting to make theirs cooler. Oh, heat source and a fridge or refrigerator. So for heat and one for coolness, and then a timer to possibly see how long that item stays at that temperature. This is their procedures. So preparing the samples, having them at room temperature, one being in an oven. After heating, they'll let the sample sit and see how long it takes for the sample to drop to the initial temperature that they had recorded at the beginning. And then they're going to repeat that process 5 times. And they're going to repeat that method for what it is that they're doing for cooling. So if they put it in the fridge or freezer, they went through the process of looking at the rules wizard. And after going through the rules wizard, these were the 4 items that are needed. So reminder, the 1A and 1B are required by every single experiment. So these are all likely going to come up. Well, they all will come up for your experiment 1A and 1B, and also the official abstract form, which is also one that is required by all ISEF ones. And we asked, do you need IRB approval? Because they aren't using any human subjects, they're using earth materials, and not any sort of like bioagents and things like that, or animals. They don't need IRB approval. And so the next thing that they're gonna do is by November 10th, between November 10th and November 24th, they're going to be conducting this experiment. And so the next thing that would be due here is by December 8th, which is in about about less than 4 weeks, I'd say 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks, they would start adding in their information for their results. So tables, graphs, charts, and things. And if more slides are needed to sort of include here, because your slides may be taken up entirely by a table or a graph, that would start to be included here. So yeah, that's the next thing is the results, and then later is the conclusion. So that's how you would submit your items to us so that we can see and sort of check to see how far along you are with your project and if you're needing any sort of assistance. And we'll also give feedback there. So if you had questions on sort of where do I submit these assignments, what am I supposed to be doing at this point, that's to give you an example of how things are progressing. And you still have time. So if you feel like you've not been able to do some things specifically by when we've set the deadline, you still have plenty of time. So if you're needing support in any way, then feel free to let us know. So in summary, we've discussed how to look at your results and also discussed how to create your conclusions. And if there are any questions, feel free to let me know. Our next workshop is going to be on Tuesday, November 25th. So because of the Veterans Day holiday, we did have this on Wednesday, but for the future workshops, we'll be continuing our Tuesday time. And this quote is from Ben Nighthorse Campbell, and he said, "There is but one secret to success, never give up." Any questions, folks? I'm going to stop the recording.